On this episode of What's Going On with Shipping,
Solong has collided with tanker Stena Immaculate in the outer anchorage. Both vessels are abandoning. Vessels who have firefighting equipment or who can assist with search and rescue, contact Humber Coast Guard on Channel 16. Vessel Stena Immaculate is carrying Jet A1 fuel, which is on fire and in the water. Request vessels remain at a safe distance. Humber Coast Guard coordinating, date time group 101000 UTC.
Hi, I'm your host, Sal Mercogliano. Welcome to today's episode. So we want to do an update on the events that took place off the east coast of England. This involves the collision between the motor vessel Solong, a container ship heading southbound from Scotland, heading to Rotterdam, hitting a anchored tanker, the motor tanker Stena Immaculate U.S. flag vessel. Both ships are on fire and have been abandoned by their crew. All the crew have been saved and rescued. There is one member of the Solong crew that is in the hospital. Everybody else is okay. So let's go ahead and take a look at the situation right now regarding these vessels. If you're new to the channel, hey, take a moment, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell so you'll be alerted about new videos as they come out. So it's approximately 0300 UTC time on March 11th. This is showing the position of the vessels right now. Here is motor vessel Solong. Now, this is a dated position. If we look at the last time AIS has updated, it's 16 hours and 18 minutes ago. We assume the vessel to be in this area, and I'll explain why here in a second. We don't think the vessel anchored because of the way it rammed into Stena Immaculate bow on at 16 knots. It is very unlikely that an anchor was dropped from Solong, so she may be drifting in the area. She may be tied up in with the Stena Immaculate, but we believe the ship to be in this area. This ship is about a 500 TEU vessel. It's what we refer to in the trade as a feeder vessel. This type of vessel moves from port to port, very short periods of time in port. They move very quickly, drop off cargo, and head to the next. And we'll take a look at the track of the Solong here over the past year. Here's the position of Stena Immaculate. This is being updated through her AIS, Automated Information System. We're getting updates from her, so there's still power on for the AIS. The ship has been abandoned. The ship is anchored. Her starboard anchor, her right front anchor, is out. The ship was struck on the port side, T-bone, basically a direct perpendicular hit by the Solong into the port side of Stena Immaculate. That ruptured her fuel tank. She is carrying jet fuel. The vessel is under charter to the United States Navy, the Military Sealift Command. It is doing that charter for an organization called the Defense Logistics Agency. The ship's under a short-term charter, about a 70-day charter, to deliver jet fuel, in this case, to the region in and around the Humber. The fire was precipitated when the collision happened. When Solong struck Stena Immaculate, they ruptured the fuel tanks on the port side. The way a tanker looks like, it almost looks like if you look above an ice cube tray with the different kind of cuts in it, in the little compartments. What has happened is the Stena Immaculate has leaked out its jet fuel. The sparks, the heat, the collision caused the fire to take place, and now the vessel is fully engulfed on fire. Now, the ship has an inert gas system. This allows the atmosphere within the tanks to not have enough oxygen for combustion. However, the ship's systems are not running, and if compartments have been damaged, if the compartments have been fractured, then the inert gas will begin to dissipate. Oxygen will build up in these areas, and you will have continual fires in the area. Let's go ahead and zoom in here and take a look at what has happened since the accident. I'm going to do a replay of the event here in a moment, but I want to show you where everyone is. So here is the location of Stena Immaculate and Solong. You will notice that the English authorities have put out a total exclusion zone around the vessel. So you will see these TEZs, total exclusion zone buoys, have been set about a 2-mile radius around the vessel. And we believe that's maybe for one of two reasons. Number one, the Solong, the container ship, the small feeder vessel that was operating in the area, had on board 15 containers of sodium cyanide, and there's a fear that the heat will ignite that, burn that gas, atomize it, put it in the atmosphere, and ships that were in the area, and we'll show you how many ships were in that area helping do the rescue and fight fire. The fear was that a toxic cloud could overcome one of the vessels, and so they have vacated the area out. There's also a concern with the fire on board the Stena Immaculate that you could have a potential buildup of vapors in some of the compartments and a potential explosion. So a exclusion zone has been set up in the area. The rescue vessels have all returned back to port. There's some vessels monitoring. You have a pilot vessel out here right now that is in the area monitoring it. The anchorages have been shifted. You had a whole batch of anchored vessels down here. They have since moved out from the area, and vessels that were anchored in and around this region have moved out toward the east here. Prior to the accident, there was a whole batch of vessels anchored right here across the area. So when Stena Immaculate came in, she anchored in a sea of ships there. I inaccurately reported I wasn't sure why Stena Immaculate anchored there, but as you'll see in the replay, ships are anchored here all the time. So this is the position we have. I would expect early in the morning that firefighting crews will come back out. They'll be doing some air monitoring in the area to make sure that they don't have any sort of toxic vapors in the area, and a salvage plan will be put together to tackle the fires that are currently going on board the vessels. So I want to show you the route of Solong over the past year. I went into MarineTraffic. They have an ability so that you can pull up tracks. This is the track of the vessel over the past year. And you can see by the density of the track that the vessel operates on some set routes. So for example, coming out of the region around Edinburgh, the vessel will operate down here, goes down into Hull, down toward Rotterdam, Antwerp to the port of London, out over here to the Irish coast, so go up into Belfast to Dublin, down here to Cove, and then operate along the northern coast of Spain, Portugal, and actually into the Mediterranean, actually into Italy for a brief period of time. But one of its standard runs is this run coming out of Scotland, heading down to Rotterdam. So one of the things that's been talked about on social media and a few other places and comments in my previous video is this seems suspicious. How is it that the Solong just rammed directly at 16 knots into the side of a U.S. flag vessel carrying Department of Defense fuel? This seems like a gray zone issue. It seems like that this shouldn't have happened. Well, when you look at Solong's track, it becomes very clear that this vessel operated in this area all the time. I'm going to zoom in here, and this shows you again the track for the past year. And zooming in here, all these lines show past tracks of Solong over the course of the year. And you'll notice the vessel is literally on top of multiple paths that the vessel had taken. I talked about the fact in the earlier video that what tends to happen, especially on feeder vessels that have very small crews, you're talking about a crew of about 15, 16 people on a ship, you'll have maybe a mate up on the bridge with one person, but sometimes it's just the mate up there. These ships will use their automated systems, their chart navigation systems, and follow a set path. You don't get this level of kind of course tracking here unless you're using automated systems. And one of the things that we can do here is pull up past runs. So this is the run that the Solong was on. This is the 10 March track, showing you the vessel going 16 knots. So a lot of people were asking, well, is the ship always going that fast? Well, here it is at 3 March. It was doing 17.3 knots. Here it is at 15.6 knots. Here it is going north at 15 knots. Heading north at 17 knots. Now, it doesn't always do it. Here's one on 27 January at 11.6 knots. You'll notice some of these tracks go far out here. That is because the vessel was maneuvering around this large anchored area where there's a lot of anchored vessels in here. But if you zoom in here again a little bit more, what becomes very clear is that this vessel went over this track line about a half dozen times. This shows you the position where the vessel actually struck the Stena Immaculate and then moved out of position here and then eventually drifted off. So the idea that Solong is, you know, a terrorist player, I don't buy at all. I tend to feel like that this is a case of just poor seamanship. So this is 10 March at 9:20 in the morning. Solong is making its southbound track. You'll notice that its previous track is just a little bit to the east, but not too much. And as we get closer in here, you start seeing other vessels pop up, and I'm going to show you again a clearer view here. But the vessel heads in and will just absolutely just run straight into Stena Immaculate. Now, Stena Immaculate was at anchor. There is nothing an anchored vessel can do. Now, the mate on watch can be observing Solong coming toward it. They can call them on VHF channel 16. What you heard at the very beginning of the video is the standard screening channel that all ships should listen to. You can call them with AIS. You can know exactly what ship it is. It's the reason for AIS. So that Stena Immaculate can call motor vessel Solong, I have you on a collision course. What are your intentions? We don't know if that's done. We won't know until the interviews with the crews and maybe the vessel data recorder is recovered. They will have a radar system with a collision avoidance system on it, those alerts that go off when you're on a collision. However, you can mute those alarms. You can turn them off. And so we don't know what was happening on the bridge of the Solong, whether or not they knew they were getting into a collision course. What was the crew member doing? Were they inattentive? Were they in the bathroom? Were they on their phone? Were they sleeping? We don't know. But we do know that when the collision takes place at about 9:30 in the morning, there was reduced visibility. We saw the fog in the area during those firefighting images you saw at the beginning of the video. So this next video is a speeded up version of MarineTraffic, because a lot of people were asking, okay, is this normal for in and around the region? Unfortunately, what you tend to see all the time is that one image of Solong going into Stena Immaculate. You're not seeing the bigger picture here. So I'm going to go ahead and let this play in the background. And what you'll notice is Stena Immaculate coming into the anchorage right here. Here she is in the anchorage. You'll notice a slew of vessels here and in and around the anchorage here. So vessels are anchoring out here. There's vessels in the other anchorage here. This is the Humber buoy. So they're coming into the Humber estuary. It's not the Humber River, as I was told multiple times. So I pause. This is 10 March, 09:17 UTC time. Here is Solong coming southbound at this moment at 16 knots. Stena Immaculate is about midfield in this anchorage, maybe a little bit toward the west side of it, but you'll see other vessels anchored in and around this area. So this is a normal anchorage for this area. Stena Immaculate is at anchor. You'll have a mate up on the bridge monitoring radar. They will see Solong coming in. If they have their collision avoidance system on, they may start pinging on the Solong coming in. But I will tell you, as an anchored vessel, you're not usually worried too much about steaming vessels. The onus is on this steam vessel. There is no way for Stena Immaculate to get out of the way of the Solong. Ships at anchor, you would have to bring the diesel engine up. You would have to start the diesel engine. That takes some time. You got to warm everything up. You have to pull the anchor up. There's no way Stena Immaculate can basically get out of the way. Yeah, you can pull on the anchor with the engine, but you still got to get the engine up. There is really nothing for Stena Immaculate to do in this situation. So I'm going to let this run for a second up to the point where you get to the collision, and this is where the collision takes place. So we're looking at about 09:48 UTC time. The collision has taken place. Notice that there's vessels here. What you would have had was Solong going through a series of anchored vessels. The ship never deviated. So Solong didn't slow down. At 16 knots, she T-boned into Stena Immaculate. And while she's not a big ship, that amount of force at that speed is what's going to trigger the fire that will erupt into the vessel. One of the things I want you to really note is how fast responses take place in and around this area. So in particular, you'll notice down here 2 of these Windcat vessels. These are high-speed catamarans that are used to send service crews out to the wind farm that is right here in this area. There's a large wind farm right here. Shows up on the charts. But you'll notice that the Windcats come flying in there at 30-something knots. to start providing assistance. Which I think is one of the great things about this event, besides the fact that no one got killed, is the amount of rescue craft that are just available in this area is amazing. When you watch what comes out of the Humber here, it's going to be a slew of craft. You're seeing all these boats right now get underway, heading into the channel and heading up here to provide assistance. And basically, Stena Immaculate is just being swarmed by vessels at this point, so much so that you can't even see all the names. We're seeing the arrival of Royal National Lifeboat Institution boats, RNLI. One of the things that's really incredible for me is in the United States, our Coast Guard, the United States Coast Guard, is a uniformed service. It is professional service. In England, a lot of this is being done by volunteers. And as a 20-year volunteer firefighter, I salute all of you in your effort. I would love to be able to run a lifeboat. An RNLI lifeboat would be a dream for me. It would be a great assignment to do it. I'm restricted to running a boat on the Cape Fear River that's not quite this level. Play a little bit more and you just see the firefighting boats come out. And now what you're seeing here take place is the firefighting element. So there was an initial attack by tugboats coming in. You have a whole slew of tug and fireboats coming out here. So we're seeing them all come out. These are tugs from in and around the region. Every tugboat has the ability to shoot water through monitors, and you're seeing firefighting taking place. The other thing you'll begin to notice is the evacuation of the anchorages here of vessels. They're going to start clearing them out of the area so as not to be encumbered by the potential fire here as these vessels drift. And just a lot of fire apparatus in the area. And then here, right around 1500 UTC on 10 March, you'll start seeing the vessels clear away. This is when the exclusion zone went into effect. 1500 UTC, we're seeing those vessels begin to clear away, and you see basically a dead zone develop around Stena Immaculate and Solong. So again, I believe it's because of the chemicals being carried on the container ship, but it was also the fear of potential explosion from the fire on board Stena Immaculate. And so you clear out, and then eventually what we see is everybody start heading back toward the end of the evening, and everyone returns back into the anchorage. So we don't have anything further on the vessel. Again, Stena Immaculate was under a government contract. Obviously, this is going to impact the ability to deliver jet fuel for U.S. Air Force bases that are in England. The ship is operated by Crowley Maritime. Crowley Maritime put out a statement yesterday. This is the Crowley Statement at approximately 10 a.m. UTC, 5 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on March 10th. While anchored off the North Sea coast of Hull, Crowley-managed Stena Immaculate was struck by a container ship, the Solong. The fire ruptured a cargo tank containing Jet A1 fuel due to the lesion. Quick little note here. Whether this is a collision or a lesion is a bit in doubt. A lesion means a moving vessel striking a stationary object. Stena Immaculate is anchored, but it's not really stationary, so I don't know if you want to call it a collision or a lesion. They call it a lesion. A fire occurred as a result of it. The fuel was reported released. The Stena Immaculate crew abandoned the vessel following multiple explosions on board. The vessel has a free-fall lifeboat on the stern of the vessel. I haven't really seen a good picture yet whether or not that lifeboat was implemented. I know that the crew was picked up by the RNLI and other rescue craft in the area and brought ashore. Crowley immediately initiated its emergency vessel response plan, is actively working with public agencies. Our first priority is the safety of the people and environment. They have since issued a second update. The beginning of it is very much the same. Just add a couple of things here. Crowley's working closely with response agencies, including His Majesty's Coast Guard, to secure the vessel in a restricted safety area and initiate spill containment response. All 23 Crowley mariners that were on board are safe and accounted for with no reported injuries. This comes from Cal Hayden, the Vice President of Crowley Global Ship Management. Quote, "As with all our operations, Crowley's priority is to protect the safety of mariners and the environment. We greatly appreciate the quick actions and support of the UK authorities. Rescue workers and others to today's incident remain committed to working with them on a continued response effort." Tanker was selected under the Maritime Administration for the Tanker Security Program. It was under charter to Military Sealift Command. The tanker was anchored while it awaited a berth at the availability at the port of Klingholm. where it was due to make a standard delivery of fuel as part of a routine service under this program. At the time it was struck, the 183-meter, 596-foot Stena Immaculate was carrying 220,000 barrels of jet fuel. A barrel of jet fuel is 42 gallons. In 16 segregated cargo tanks. Crowley is supporting the relevant authorities in the UK who are investigating the incident. So, a statement from Crowley on this. The German-owned company that operates Solong has also made statements. The owner of the ship, Ernest Roos, had made a statement when one of the 14 crew members was still missing. We haven't had an update since then. The British have closed ports on the Humber until they can get the situation outside the port under control. This is obviously going to cost millions, if not billions, of pounds for the British economy as trade comes to a screeching halt. This is a major port for the British. Obviously, a lot of commerce coming in and out that it's now stuck waiting for this to be cleared. This is going to be under full investigation beginning in the morning. I expect that the British authorities, in this case, the Marine Investigative Board, MIBA, will be leading this investigation. However, we are multi-jurisdictional here. You have this taking place within British waters. You have a U.S. flagged vessel. You have a Madeira flagged. Some people will call the ship Portuguese flagged. The ship is Madeira flagged. So it flies a Portuguese flag, but this is the open registry for Portugal. This allows the vessel to operate within the EU as a coastal vessel. It's the way they get around cabotage in this region. You've got the Madeira flagged. You'll have the insurance companies for all these vessels. You'll have the classification societies for all these vessels. It's a mess. It is an international disaster when you have accidents like this. And of course, we've got the environmental impact. While jet fuel evaporates pretty well and very quickly, you dump enough of it in the water, it's going to cause problems, especially for an area that has a lot of fishing, as this area does off the coast. Plus you have hazardous materials on board the Solong. That is not unusual. Let me be clear. Vessels carry hazardous material all the time. You'd be terrified to know what is sailing up and down the coast of your countries and your areas all the time. I mean, this is very typical. Some people are going to be sitting there going, why are there 15 containers of sodium cyanide on board? Well, I mean, you just had a vessel off the east coast of Great Britain packed to the gills with ammonium nitrate. I mean, you have these type of hazardous materials sailing on the ocean all the time. I hope this answers some of your questions. One of the things I will do is pin a comment down below where you can post your questions and I'll try to answer them for you. I'll try to get answers for you as quickly as I can. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, hey, take a moment, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so be alerted about new videos as they come out. Leave a comment, share it across social media, and if you can, support the page. How do you do that? Hit that super thanks button down below or head on over to Patreon where you can become a monthly or yearly subscriber. Everyone, I appreciate tuning in. I apologize for getting a couple of things wrong, but it was an early morning trying to get the news out there very quickly. I'm very cognizant of the fact that I try to provide good information out there so that when news sources start reporting, they have some good information to go to. Not always perfect. I don't always get everything right. I'm the first one to admit that. I drive people in the industry crazy sometimes because I'm willing to open my mouth sooner than they would like sometimes. But listen, I want to try to educate people and understand that, you know, when you make ships operate like Solong does on this very tight schedule, you're going to cause crew fatigue. You're going to cause problems to happen. And, you know, I'm not going to be surprised to find out that's one of the leading causes for this accident. And the sea is a dangerous place, and we see these accidents do happen. I will note that accidents are decreasing over the years when it comes to ocean shipping. However, the scale of the accident, I shouldn't say the scale, but the size and impact of the accidents are increasing because of the increase in the volume and velocity. So we're getting fewer accidents, but they tend to be much bigger and broader in scale and scope than ever before. Until the next episode, this is Sal, signing off.